Ma'am, you need to stand up. Right now. Captain Daniel Crawford's voice cut through the cabin like a blade dragged across glass. Not loud, not shaky, controlled. Final. A few heads turned. A cough died mid-breath. Somewhere near the galley, a glass clinked once, then stilled. Rachel Morgan remained seated. Seat 1 Alpha, the forward-facing leather chair. The one every person on that aircraft knew was reserved for whoever owned the night. She sat there in a grey hoodie, fabric softened by years of wear, the zipper pulled halfway up. Black leggings, sneakers with scuffed toes, no jewelry, no watch. A canvas tote at her feet, resting on cream carpet that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Outside the oval window, rain streaked down the glass in thin, uneven lines, blurring the runway lights into smeared halos of white and red. The jet was still at the gate. Engines quiet. The kind of quiet that presses on the ears. Daniel Crawford stood over her, tall, broad-shouldered, his navy blazer perfectly pressed, gold stripes sharp on his cuffs. 56 years old, silver at the temples, a jaw set hard by decades of command. He smelled faintly of coffee and aftershave. In his mind, the calculation had already been made. She did not belong here. "Ma'am," he said again, slower this time, as if explaining something simple to a child. "This is a private charter. That seat is reserved." Rachel lifted her eyes. They were calm, dark, focused, not apologetic, not confused. "I'm aware," she said. Her voice was even, low, no edge. That, too, unsettled him. Daniel felt a flicker of irritation crawl up his spine. He had spent his entire career reading cockpits, storms, men under pressure. He knew what panic looked like. He knew what entitlement looked like. This woman showed neither. Around them, the cabin held its breath. The Gulfstream interior glowed warm under recessed lighting. Cream leather, walnut veneer, gold fixtures catching soft reflections. The faint scent of polished wood and orchids hung in the air. This was not a place for uncertainty. This was not a place for mistakes. Daniel cleared his throat. A sound meant to reset the room. "I don't see you on my passenger briefing," he said. "And the crew entrance is in the rear." Rachel glanced down once at the tote bag by her feet, then back up at him. "My name is Rachel Morgan," she said. "I'm on the manifest." The word landed flat. Technical. Precise. Daniel almost laughed. "The manifest," he repeated, lips thinning. "The manifest for this flight lists Emily Stanton and her assistant. That's it." He gestured vaguely at Rachel's clothes, at her shoes, at the absence of anything that signaled money, power, or apology. And it certainly doesn't list this. A ripple moved through the cabin. Subtle. A shift of weight. A woman 2 rows back leaned toward her companion and whispered, not quite quietly enough, "Is she serious?" Rachel did not react. Her hands rested on the armrests, fingers relaxed. No tremor, no fidgeting. "I was added an hour ago," she said. "You can check your tablet." Daniel did not look at his tablet. He did not need to. He had already decided who she was. "This aircraft is not public transportation," he said, voice cooling. "We maintain standards here. Security standards. Appearance matters." There it was, the line drawn, clean, invisible, brutal. From the galley, a flight attendant froze mid-step. Sarah Collins, early 40s, watched with wide eyes, her fingers tightening around a crystal flute. She knew that tone. Everyone did. The captain had shifted from courtesy to control. "Captain," she started, then stopped herself. Daniel did not turn. "Ma'am," he said, leaning in just enough for Rachel to feel the shadow of him fall across her. "You need to gather your belongings and leave the aircraft." A pause. Not silence. Tension. Thick enough to taste. Rachel's gaze did not waver. But something changed. Not fear. Focus. "Before you do that," she said quietly, "you should verify the manifest." Daniel's jaw tightened. A muscle jumped near his temple. "This conversation is over," he snapped. "You are delaying departure." Behind them, the cabin door remained open. Rain-scented air drifted in. Footsteps echoed faintly on the metal stairs. High heels, sharp, fast, impatient. "Why are we not moving yet?" Emily Stanton's voice hit the cabin before she did. 27 years old, designer trench coat in soft blush pink, oversized sunglasses despite the night. Her assistant trailed behind her, arms straining under the weight of 3 oversized suitcases. Emily stopped short when she saw Rachel, saw where she was sitting. Her smile dropped. "Captain," she said, pointing with one manicured finger. "Why is there someone in my seat?" The shift in Daniel was immediate, palpable. His shoulders eased. His mouth softened into a practiced smile. "Ms. Stanton," he said warmly. "Welcome aboard. Apologies for the delay. We're handling a minor security issue." He shot Rachel a look. Cold. Sharp. This individual was just leaving. Emily wrinkled her nose, eyes sliding over Rachel like she was something tracked in on a shoe. "Did she touch anything?" Emily asked. "I don't want to sit there if it's contaminated." A few passengers exhaled sharply. Someone else laughed, nervous and short. Rachel stood then. Slowly. She was taller than she looked sitting down. The hoodie fell differently when she rose, revealing straight posture, controlled movement. She picked up her tote, the canvas whispering softly as it brushed her leg. "I don't want to cause a scene," she said. Her voice was steady, but now there was steel beneath it. "But I am not trespassing." Emily scoffed. "You're not flying private," she said. "People like you don't just wander onto jets like this." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice, urgency edging into it. "Listen carefully," he said. "If you do not comply, I will call security. You will be removed. And once that happens, this becomes a federal issue." The word federal hung in the air. Heavy. Threatening. In the United States, everyone knew what that implied. Rachel met his eyes. For the first time, Daniel felt something he did not like. Not defiance, not fear. Assessment, as if she were measuring him. judging him. "Check the manifest," she said again. Soft. Final. Daniel's patience snapped. "Enough," he said. "You're done. Done here." He reached down, grabbed the strap of her canvas tote, and tossed it into the aisle. The bag hit the carpet with a dull thud. Papers shifted inside. Something solid knocked against something else. The sound echoed. Rachel looked at the bag, then back at him. For a fraction of a second, something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Not anger. Calculation. She inhaled. Slow. Controlled. "Fine," she said. She bent, picked up her tote, and walked past him toward the back of the cabin. Past the mahogany table. Past the leather seats. Past the place she had every right to occupy. Daniel felt a surge of relief, of victory. Behind him, Emily dropped into the seat, spraying sanitizer across the armrests with theatrical disgust. As Rachel reached the galley, the jump seat waited. Narrow, upright, built for short moments, not long flights. She sat, knees nearly touching the bulkhead, and fastened the belt. Sarah hovered nearby, eyes shining with something like regret. "I'm sorry," Sarah whispered. Rachel shook her head once. "No," she said quietly. "You're not." The cabin door closed. The engines began to hum, low and distant. Daniel Crawford returned to the cockpit, convinced he had restored order. He had no idea he had just made the worst decision of his life. The engines came alive with a low, predatory hum, vibrating through the fuselage and into the bones of everyone on board. It was the sound of money moving, of power lifting itself off the ground. Rachel Morgan sat rigidly on the jump seat, the metal frame pressing into her spine, the bulkhead inches from her knees. The cabin felt different back here, louder, colder. The air conditioning pushed harder, sharper, carrying the faint scent of jet fuel and burned coffee. Every vibration landed directly on her body, unapologetic. She welcomed it. In the main cabin, laughter bloomed too quickly, too loudly. Emily Stanton's voice cut through the space like crystal striking marble. High, careless, certain of its place in the world. Daniel Crawford's voice followed, smoother now, relaxed, the voice of a man who believed the problem had been resolved. Rachel closed her eyes for half a second. Not to retreat, to focus. She reached into her tote and pulled out her phone. It did not look like much at first glance. No logo. Matte black casing. Unassuming. The kind of device you would overlook if you did not know what to look for. Her thumb hovered over the screen as the plane began to taxi, the motion slow, deliberate. She unlocked it. A single message field opened. Authorize, code, Black 01. Initiate immediate audit of asset Sierra 9909. Personnel review. Crawford, Daniel. Full scope. She paused, listened. From the cockpit, Daniel's voice crackled over the intercom. Calm, commanding. A practiced cadence designed to reassure people who paid to be reassured. Ladies and gentlemen, we are number 1 for departure. Destination London Luton. Flight time approximately 6 hours and 12 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the service. Rachel pressed send. The message vanished. No confirmation, no sound. Outside, the runway lights stretched ahead like a blade. The engines roared. The aircraft surged forward. Rachel was pressed back against the wall as the G-forces climbed, the jump seat unforgiving. Her breath remained steady. She did not flinch. As the jet lifted into the night, the city lights fell away beneath them, New Jersey shrinking into a scatter of gold and shadow. The plane climbed, smooth and relentless, until the seat belt sign chimed off with a soft, hollow note. In the main cabin, champagne corks popped. Daniel emerged from the cockpit moments later, posture loose, shoulders squared. He moved with the easy confidence of a man who had always landed on his feet. He leaned against the wall near Emily's seat, accepting a glass from Sarah with a nod. "Everything to your liking, Miss Stanton?" he asked. Emily swirled the pale liquid, inspected it, then shrugged. "It's fine," she said, "but it smells weird in here, like, I don't know. Budget." She flicked her gaze toward the closed curtain that separated the galley from the cabin. "Can we not have to look at her?" Daniel chuckled, low and conspiratorial. "Of course." He reached up and yanked the heavy curtain shut with more force than necessary. The fabric snapped against the track, sealing Rachel and Sarah into the narrow service space. The sound echoed like a door slamming. Sarah startled. Rachel did not. From the other side of the curtain, voices softened, blurred. The hum of luxury resumed, the clink of glass, the rustle of linen, a world reasserting itself. Sarah swallowed. "Do you want some water?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Rachel shook her head. "No. Thank you." She adjusted slightly, testing the limits of the seat. It did not give. The metal remained rigid, exacting its toll. "Long night," Sarah murmured, unsure what else to say. Rachel opened her eyes and looked at her. Really looked. "It's going to get longer," she said. "Not a threat, a fact." Sarah stepped back, heart pounding. In the cockpit, Daniel sipped his coffee and glanced at the instruments. Everything green, everything perfect. He felt a familiar satisfaction settle in his chest. Order restored, standards upheld. Emily leaned back, scrolling through her phone. So she said, bored already. Dad mentioned the owners might be selling the fleet. Daniel shrugged. They did. 3 days ago. Emily perked up. Seriously? To who? No one public, Daniel said. Private transaction. Probably a hedge fund, or some Silicon Valley ghost with more money than taste. Emily smirked. Figures. Whoever it is, they need better screening. That woman back there was a nightmare. Daniel nodded. She won't be flying with us again. The words felt good in his mouth. The cockpit door chimed. Evan Brooks, the co-pilot, leaned out, face pale. 32. Talented. Still carried the quiet tension of someone who knew exactly how replaceable he was. Captain, he said, Ops is calling. Priority 1. Daniel frowned. What kind of priority one? Evan swallowed. Ownership line. The word hit harder than turbulence. Daniel's smile faded. That's not possible. They're insisting, Evan said, and they want to speak to a passenger. Daniel scoffed. Miss Stanton? Evan shook his head. His voice dropped. The other one. For the first time that night, Daniel felt cold. He took the handset. This is Captain Crawford. Captain Crawford, a man's voice said. Calm, crisp, unmistakably senior. This is Mark Reynolds, Director of Operations. Daniel straightened. Yes, sir. We have an issue, Reynolds continued. We are receiving a distress alert from the owner's biometric device. Daniel blinked. Distress? The aircraft is operating normally. Not the aircraft, Reynolds said. The owner. Silence rushed into Daniel's ears, loud as engine noise. The owner is on board your flight, Reynolds said. Her device registered a sustained spike in heart rate and stress indicators. She also issued a code black command. Daniel's grip tightened. Who is the owner? A pause. Brief, deliberate. You did receive the acquisition memo, correct? Daniel's mind raced. Faces, names, numbers. Nothing landed. Reynolds' voice hardened. Stratosphere Aviation was acquired 3 days ago by Rachel Morgan, founder and chief executive of Morgan Aerospace, net worth approximately $4.2 billion. The words rearranged the world. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. Rachel Morgan, the hoodie, the tote, the jump seat. No, he whispered. She is listed on your manifest, Reynolds said. Seat 1 Alpha. Daniel's stomach dropped. His vision narrowed. The cockpit felt suddenly too small, the air too thin. Is she secure? Reynolds asked. Daniel did not answer. Behind him the curtain rustled. Daniel turned. Rachel stood there, framed by the galley lights. The hoodie was unzipped now, revealing a simple black blouse, silk catching the light. The tote hung from her shoulder. Her posture was relaxed, or controlled. She held the phone to her ear. Her eyes met his. They were not angry. They were waiting. Daniel lowered the handset. His hand shook. Evan stared, frozen. Take the controls, Daniel said hoarsely. Evan hesitated. Sir? Now, Daniel said. He stepped past the co-pilot and into the galley, each step heavier than the last. The hum of the aircraft pressed in on him, relentless. Rachel sat back down on the jump seat, crossing her ankles with deliberate ease. Daniel stopped in front of her. Up close, he could see the fine lines around her eyes. The calm that came from certainty, not arrogance. Ms. Morgan, he began. She raised a hand. Captain Crawford, she said evenly. We'll talk. In a moment. She glanced at the seat. I want you to understand what this feels like. Daniel swallowed. For the first time in his career, he had no idea what was about to happen next. Daniel Crawford remained standing in the galley, hands clasped behind his back by instinct, posture drilled into him decades earlier. The aircraft hummed around them, steady and indifferent, as if unaware that the balance of power inside it had just inverted. Rachel Morgan watched him without blinking. "Sit," she said. The word was quiet, precise. It did not need volume. Daniel hesitated for half a second too long, long enough for Sarah to notice, long enough for Evan, still in the cockpit, to feel something tighten in his chest. Daniel lowered himself onto the jump seat opposite her. The metal creaked under his weight. His knees hit the bulkhead. The space forced him inward, compressed, stripped of the physical dominance he had relied on minutes earlier. Rachel adjusted her position slightly, making room for nothing. Her phone rested loosely in her hand now, screen dark. The damage had already been done. "You threatened me with federal consequences," she said, tone conversational, as if reviewing a checklist. "You invoked security without verifying identity. You removed me from my assigned seat. And you used your authority to humiliate a passenger in front of witnesses." Daniel opened his mouth. She raised a finger. "Before you speak," she continued, "understand this. Every word you say from this point forward is being logged, not by me, by your company." Daniel closed his mouth. The galley felt smaller. The curtain separating them from the cabin pulsed faintly with the pressure of airflow. Somewhere beyond it, Emily Stanton laughed again, unaware. Daniel's voice came out hoarse. "Ms. Morgan, this was a misunderstanding." Rachel tilted her head. Not in curiosity, in evaluation. "A misunderstanding requires missing information," she said. "You had the information. You chose not to look at it." He swallowed. Sweat beaded at his temples. "I was following protocol," he said weakly. "Security protocol." Rachel's lips curved, barely. Not a smile. "Show me the protocol that says clothing determines threat level," she said. Daniel said nothing. "Show me the regulation that allows a captain to ignore a verified manifest because a passenger makes him uncomfortable," she added. The aircraft hit a pocket of light turbulence. The galley shuddered. Daniel's shoulder brushed the wall. Rachel remained still. "You didn't see a risk," she said. "You saw a disruption to an image you've been protecting for years. An image that serves people like you." She leaned forward slightly. Not aggressively. Intentionally. "I didn't buy this company for the planes," she said. "Planes are assets, replaceable. I bought it because I saw a systemic weakness, one rooted in arrogance disguised as professionalism." Daniel felt something collapse inside him. He had always believed himself principled, disciplined, above petty prejudice. "You saw a hoodie," Rachel continued. "You saw worn shoes, and you assumed disorder." She paused. Let the words settle. "That assumption is how accidents happen." From the cockpit, Evan listened, hands steady on the controls, heart racing. He had flown with Daniel for 2 years. He had admired him, trusted him. Now, doubt crept in. Daniel's voice cracked. "I've flown for over 30 years, he said. "I've never had an incident." Rachel's eyes sharpened. "That you know of?" Silence stretched. Heavy. Unforgiving. "Tell me," she said, "when was the last time you read the full passenger manifest before takeoff?" Daniel hesitated. Rachel nodded once. That pause is the answer. He leaned back, the jump seat digging into his spine. For the first time, the physical discomfort registered fully. The numbness in his legs, the constant vibration, the way the space refused to accommodate him. "This seat," Rachel said, following his gaze. "It's designed for short durations, emergency use, high fatigue load." She folded her hands. "You thought it was appropriate for me?" Daniel stared at the floor. The curtain snapped open. Emily Stanton stood there, irritation painted across her face. She held an empty champagne flute, fingers tapping impatiently against crystal. "Why is the captain back here?" she demanded. "And why is she standing up?" Rachel turned her head slowly. The look she gave Emily was not hostile. It was worse. Amused. "I'm done sitting," Rachel said. Emily scoffed. "You don't get to decide that." Rachel rose to her full height. The motion was unhurried, deliberate. She stepped past Daniel and into the main cabin. The space fell quiet, as if someone had pulled the sound from it. Emily took a step back without realizing it. Rachel walked to seat 1 Alpha, the seat she had been removed from. Emily's designer coat lay draped across it. A handbag sat on the floor. Rachel lifted the coat with 2 fingers and placed it on the opposite seat. Emily gasped. "That's Burberry." Rachel sat down, crossed her legs, looked up. "That coat costs about $3,000, she said calmly. "The fuel burn for this flight costs over $15,000. This aircraft costs $75 million. She leaned back. "So unless you plan to purchase it mid-air, I suggest you lower your voice." The cabin froze. Emily's mouth opened, closed, her world tilted. Daniel stood in the galley doorway, watching the collapse in real time. His stomach churned. "Captain Crawford," Rachel said, not looking at him. "Who owns this aircraft?" Daniel's voice barely carried. "You do." The words landed like a verdict. Emily's face drained of color. She stared at Rachel as if seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her. "That's not possible," she whispered. Rachel met her gaze. "Google me." Emily fumbled for her phone. Her fingers shook. She read, scrolled, froze. The silence that followed was absolute. Rachel turned back to Daniel. "Return to the galley," she said. "Sit." Daniel obeyed. Hours passed. The jet cut through the night at 45,000 feet. In the main cabin, conversation dwindled to nothing. Emily sat rigid, eyes fixed forward, her earlier bravado evaporated. In the galley, Daniel endured every minute of the jump seat. The pain crept from his legs into his lower back, then his shoulders. The constant noise, the isolation, the knowledge that every sensation was earned. Evan flew with quiet precision. No mistakes, no questions. When the lights dimmed for the long stretch over the Atlantic, Daniel stared at the stainless steel coffee maker, his reflection warped and unrecognizable. He had believed authority was something you wore, something you projected. He was learning too late that real power did not need permission. As the aircraft began its descent toward London, Rachel stood, smoothing her blouse. She glanced once toward the galley. "Captain Crawford," she said, "when we land, your employment ends." Daniel closed his eyes. The aircraft lowered through cloud, the lights of the city blooming beneath them. The seatbelt sign chimed. Rachel walked toward the cockpit. "Nice flying, Evan," she said. "You have a steady hand." Evan's voice caught. "Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Remind me to review your promotion eligibility next week," she added. Daniel heard the words from the galley. They echoed long after the wheels touched the runway. The wheels struck the runway with a muted thud, a clean landing, precise and calm, the kind Daniel Crawford had executed 1,000 times himself. This time, he felt it through the jump seat like a verdict being stamped into metal. Reverse thrust roared, then softened. The aircraft rolled forward, slowing, the lights of London Luton sliding past the windows in long bands of white and amber. The cabin remained unnaturally quiet. No applause, no chatter. Just the low mechanical sigh of a machine doing exactly what it was built to do. Daniel did not move. His legs were numb. His lower back burned. The small of his spine ached in a way that felt personal, almost deliberate. He stared at the bulkhead, counting breaths, waiting for permission that no longer mattered. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Rachel Morgan stood first. She did not rush. She reached for her tote, the same canvas bag that had been thrown into the aisle hours earlier, and lifted it over her shoulder. The movement was unremarkable, ordinary, and that, more than anything, unsettled the people watching. She walked forward, heels silent against the carpet, past the mahogany table, past the leather seats that had suddenly lost their meaning. Emily Stanton remained frozen in her chair, shoulders hunched, phone clutched in her hand like a shield that no longer worked. Rachel stopped at the cockpit door. "Evan," she said, leaning in slightly. "That was a smooth approach. You handled the descent well." Evan turned, eyes wide, a flush creeping up his neck. "Thank you, Ms. Morgan." She studied him for a moment. "You maintained discipline under pressure," she said. "That matters." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Expect a call from Human Resources next week," Rachel added. "Regarding your left seat readiness." Evan's breath caught. He nodded again, unable to speak. Rachel stepped back into the aisle and turned. Daniel was struggling to stand. He braced one hand against the galley wall, the other on the edge of the jump seat. His movements were stiff, mechanical. The uniform that had once felt like armor now hung awkwardly on him, creased and damp with sweat. He adjusted his jacket, smoothed the lapels, reached for his captain's cap, as if it might restore something that had already slipped away. "Ms. Morgan," he said, voice dry. "I would like to formally apologize." Rachel looked at him. Really looked. The man he had been. The man he was now. "Open the door," she said. It was not a request. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. He turned and walked toward the main cabin door, every step heavy. He disarmed the slide, hands shaking slightly as he rotated the handle. The door swung outward. The automatic stairs deployed with a hydraulic hiss, connecting the warm, insulated cabin to the cold night outside. A gust of damp air rushed in, carrying the smell of fuel and rain. Waiting at the bottom of the stairs were 3 black SUVs, their headlights cutting sharp cones through the fog. Between them stood a man in a tailored grey suit, posture straight, briefcase in hand. Mark Reynolds. Daniel's stomach tightened. Rachel descended first. She did not touch the rail. She moved with the certainty of someone stepping onto property she owned. Reynolds stepped forward. "Ms. Morgan, welcome to London." Rachel nodded. "Thank you, Mark." "The aircraft?" he asked. "Impeccable," she said. "The avionics are excellent. The interior is pristine." She paused, then turned slowly. "The personnel," she continued, eyes settling on Daniel, "are not." Daniel felt the words like a physical blow. The ground crew had stopped moving. Tools hung idle. Conversations died mid-sentence. "Captain Crawford," Rachel said. The title sounded deliberate now. Measured. "Do you know why I'm terminating your employment?" Daniel swallowed. "Ms. Morgan, with respect, I've served this company for over 20 years. I'm not firing you for being rude to me," Rachel said. "That would be small." She took a step closer, close enough that Daniel could see his reflection in her eyes. "I'm firing you because you failed the most basic requirement of your profession," she said. "Situational awareness." She gestured toward the aircraft behind them. "You didn't read the manifest. You didn't verify identity. You substituted assumption for procedure." Her voice remained steady. "Controlled." That made it worse. "If you can't be bothered to read a passenger list," she continued, "how can I trust you to read a weather radar? An instrument panel? A warning light at 3 in the morning with 300 lives behind you?" Daniel's shoulders sagged. "Laziness," Rachel said. "In aviation, that kills." She turned to Reynolds. "Collect his credentials." Reynolds stepped forward. "Captain." Daniel unclipped his badge with slow, clumsy fingers. He held it for a moment longer than necessary, then placed it into Reynolds' waiting hand. The metal felt heavier than it should have. "Arrange transport back to New Jersey," Rachel added. "Commercial, economy." Reynolds nodded. "Understood." Daniel stood there, empty-handed, as the reality settled in. The aircraft, the sky, the uniform. None of it belonged to him anymore. He turned and walked away, shoulders slumped, disappearing into the mist toward the terminal. Rachel watched him go. No satisfaction, no triumph, just a quiet acknowledgement of balance restored. Behind her, a small movement caught her attention. Emily Stanton stood near the SUVs, pale, clutching her handbag to her chest. She looked smaller now, stripped of the confidence that had filled the cabin earlier. "Emily?" Rachel said. Emily flinched. "Yes, Ms. Morgan." "Your driver will take you to your hotel," Rachel said. "But you should answer your phone." Emily's phone buzzed in her hand. The screen lit up. One word. "Dad." Emily's breath hitched. "What did you do?" she whispered. Rachel adjusted the strap of her tote. "I sent your father an email," she said, explaining that due to the conduct of his representative, our business relationship required re-evaluation. Emily's eyes widened. "You can't." "I already did," Rachel replied. "I suggested a renegotiation of his satellite leasing contracts." Emily's voice cracked. "That's millions of dollars." Rachel nodded once. 12% increase. Emily's knees buckled slightly. She leaned against the SUV. "Apologize," Rachel said. "Not to her. To the next person you think is beneath you." She turned away. The driver opened the door. Rachel slid into the back seat, the leather cool and clean. The door closed with a solid thud, sealing out the night. As the SUV pulled away, Rachel looked out the window. She saw Daniel Crawford standing at a bus stop near the airport entrance, jacket pulled tight against the drizzle, squinting at a schedule. He looked lost, smaller than he had been hours ago. Further back, Emily stood in the rain, phone pressed to her ear, voice rising in panic. Rachel did not smile. She opened her laptop, the glow illuminating her face. She typed a single line. "Mandatory bias and procedure training for all flight crew. Effective immediately." She hit save. The SUV merged into traffic, disappearing into the London fog, leaving the quiet aftermath of decisions made and lessons learned behind it. The rain followed her into the city, a thin, relentless drizzle that blurred streetlights into long streaks of gold and white as the SU-5 moved through London traffic. Inside the vehicle, the cabin was quiet, insulated from the world, leather seats warm, the hum of the engine steady and controlled. Rachel Morgan sat back, laptop open on her knees, the glow of the screen reflecting faintly in the tinted glass. She did not look tired. She read through the first incoming reports with a calm precision that came from years of separating emotion from action. Time stamps, internal flags, automated summaries. Daniel Crawford's personnel file unfolded in clean lines of data. Performance reviews glowing with praise. Incident logs conspicuously thin. Complaints that had been closed quickly, quietly, often without escalation. A pattern emerged. Not dramatic, not criminal. Worse. Comfortable. Rachel scrolled, fingers steady. Outside, the city rushed past, unaware that an internal reckoning had already begun. Her phone vibrated once. "Mark Reynolds," she answered without preamble. "Go ahead." "We've secured the aircraft and debriefed the crew," Reynolds said. "No resistance, no surprises." Rachel nodded, though he could not see it. "And Evan?" "He's shaken," Reynolds admitted. "But solid." He followed procedure. "Good," Rachel said. "Schedule a full simulator evaluation for him. And leadership screening." "Yes, ma'am." She ended the call and closed the laptop. For the first time since boarding the jet hours earlier, Rachel allowed herself a moment of stillness. Not relief. Reflection. The jump seat returned to her mind without invitation. The pressure against her back, the forced stillness, the calculated humiliation wrapped in policy language. She had endured worse in boardrooms filled with men who smiled while trying to erase her. She had endured worse when she was younger, when power felt abstract and fragile. But this had been different. This had been public, intentional, sanctioned. The SUV slowed as it approached a private entrance. The Shard rose above them, glass and steel cutting into the low clouds. The driver pulled to a stop. "Good evening, Miss Morgan," he said, opening the door. Rachel stepped out into the rain. The cold air kissed her skin. She adjusted her coat, not hurried, not delayed, and walked inside. The lobby was quiet at this hour. Marble floors, soft lighting, a place built to impress without trying. She crossed the space and entered the elevator, ascending in silence, her reflection moving beside her in polished steel. Her suite greeted her with warmth and order. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights spread below like a living map. She set her tote down on the desk and removed her shoes, rolling tension from her shoulders with a single breath. Then the phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown caller. She answered. Rachel Morgan. A man's voice came through, strained and familiar. "Rachel, it's Thomas Stanton." She did not respond immediately. "I assume Emily has reached out," he continued. "She has," Rachel said. A pause. This situation escalated quickly. "It escalated because it existed," Rachel replied. "I didn't create it." Thomas exhaled. "Emily is young. She made a mistake." Rachel turned toward the window, watching the rain trace patterns on glass. "She made a choice," she said, "and she made it because the environment rewarded it." "We've worked together for years," Thomas said. "Our companies are intertwined." "They still are," Rachel replied, "at revised terms." Another pause. Longer this time. 12%, he said quietly. "Yes. That will cost us tens of millions annually." Rachel's voice remained level. "Then consider it tuition." The line went silent. When Thomas spoke again, his tone had shifted. Less entitlement, more caution. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing," Rachel said. "From you, I want something from your daughter." "And that is?" Rachel turned from the window. "Growth," she said. "Real growth. Not performative apologies. Not statements crafted by publicists. If she can't manage that, keep her away from my companies." Thomas swallowed. Understood. Rachel ended the call. She stood there for a moment longer, then returned to the desk and reopened her laptop. The internal dashboard had expanded. Flags multiplied. Automated alerts rolled in from different departments. Flight crew, cabin staff, ground operations. Subtle inconsistencies surfaced, not violations, patterns, small decisions that leaned in one direction too often. She began assigning tasks, independent audits, blind reviews, revised escalation protocols, mandatory retraining, not framed as punishment, but as recalibration. She drafted language carefully, deliberately. Not soft, not cruel. Clear. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Evan Brooks. She answered. "Evan." "Ms. Morgan," he said, voice tight. I wanted to say thank you for what you said in the cockpit." "You flew well," Rachel replied. "That's what matters." He hesitated. "I didn't know what to do back there." I saw what was happening, but you deferred to authority, Rachel finished. That's understandable. Is it? He asked. Rachel paused. It's human, she said. It's also something you'll need to unlearn if you want that left seat. Evan absorbed that. I do, he said. I want it. Then remember this night, Rachel replied. Not the outcome. The moment you felt something was wrong. Yes, ma'am. She ended the call. Hours passed unnoticed. The city quieted. The rain eased into mist. Rachel worked through it, methodical, exacting. This was not vengeance, it was maintenance. Near dawn, she closed the laptop and leaned back in the chair. For the first time, exhaustion settled in. She thought of Daniel Crawford at the bus stop, the way his shoulders had curved inward, as if gravity had increased around him. She did not relish his fall. She understood it. A man who had confused control with competence. She also thought of Sarah Collins, the flight attendant whose eyes had flickered with fear and sympathy. Rachel made a note to follow up. People like Sarah mattered. They always did. As the sky began to lighten, Rachel stood and poured herself a glass of water. She drank it slowly, feeling the night finally release its grip. The world would not change because of one flight. But systems could. And systems, once corrected, saved lives. She looked out over the city one last time before closing the curtains, the reflection of a woman in control staring back at her, not because she demanded it, because she had earned it. Tomorrow, the headlines would spin their narratives. Social media would dissect fragments. Opinions would rise and fall. Rachel Morgan would remain exactly where she was, at the center. Morning arrived without ceremony. Pale light slipped between the curtains and settled across the room, revealing the city in a quieter mood. Rachel Morgan woke before the alarm, as she usually did, mind already moving, already sorting. She showered, dressed, and stood by the window with a cup of coffee, watching London stretch awake. Cars traced thin lines along the streets below. Somewhere, planes lifted off, invisible behind cloud, carrying people who trusted systems they rarely thought about. By 8 o'clock, the first briefing call began. Screens filled with faces. Executives, legal counsel, operations leads from 3 continents. No one wasted time on pleasantries. The night before had already traveled faster than any aircraft. Rachel listened more than she spoke. She let them talk through the incident in fragments. Language softened by corporate habit. Words like optics, perception, reputational exposure. She let the silence after each comment grow just long enough to make them uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke. This isn't a public relations issue, she said. It's an operational failure. The room stilled. When a captain believes he can override procedure based on instinct, she continued, that is not confidence. That is risk. A man from legal cleared his throat. From a liability standpoint, we should emphasize that this was an isolated... No, Rachel said, interrupting him without raising her voice. It wasn't isolated. It was tolerated. She shared her screen. Data appeared. Charts, timelines, complaints clustered just below reporting thresholds. Passenger notes marked resolved without investigation. Patterns invisible unless someone chose to look. "This is what complacency looks like," she said. Quiet, polite, repetitive. No one argued. By the end of the call, directives had been issued. Not suggestions, directives, immediate audits, mandatory retraining, a new reporting structure that bypassed familiar hierarchies. No exemptions for tenure, no exceptions for reputation. When the call ended, Rachel closed the laptop and exhaled. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. "Sarah Collins," Rachel answered. "Sarah." There was a pause, then a careful breath on the other end. "Ms. Morgan, I wasn't sure if I should call." "I'm glad you did," Rachel said. "I just wanted you to know," Sarah continued, voice tight, "that I saw what was happening. I wanted to speak up." "I know," Rachel replied. The admission seemed to steady Sarah. "I've worked under Captain Crawford for years," she said. "He could be intimidating." "That's not leadership," Rachel said. "That's fear with a uniform." Sarah let out a quiet, shaky laugh. "I don't want to lose my job." "You won't," Rachel said. "You'll be supported, and if anyone suggests otherwise, they'll answer to me." Silence, then relief. "Thank you," Sarah said, "for seeing it." Rachel ended the call and stood for a moment, looking at the phone as if it carried weight beyond its size. Later that morning, a message arrived from an unfamiliar number. Daniel Crawford. She stared at the screen for a long second before opening it. "Ms. Morgan." "I don't expect a response. I just needed to say I understand now what I failed to see then. I was wrong." Rachel read it once, then again. She did not reply. Understanding, when it arrived too late, did not undo damage. It simply clarified it. The day moved on. Meetings, briefings, quiet confirmations of decisions already made. Outside, the fog lifted. London sharpened. By afternoon, Rachel found herself walking along the Thames, coat pulled close, the river moving dark and steady beside her. She passed people who did not know her name, did not care who owned what. She liked that. A man sat on a bench ahead, feeding crumbs to birds. He watched her approach, then nodded politely. She nodded back. Power, she thought, did not announce itself. It observed. Her phone buzzed again. Evan Brooks. "Miss Morgan," he said, breathless. "I just got the email." She smiled faintly. "Congratulations." "I don't feel like celebrating," he admitted. "Not yet." "Good," Rachel said. "That means you're taking it seriously." "I keep replaying the moment you were moved," he said. "I should have said it something." Rachel stopped walking. The river whispered beside her. "You will have many moments like that in your career," she said. "The question isn't whether you notice them, it's whether you act next time." "I will," Evan said, without hesitation. She believed him. As evening approached, the world began to catch up. News alerts bloomed across screens. Not sensational. Measured. A senior captain removed following internal review. Policy updates announced. A brief mention of ownership transition. No names, no faces, just facts. Rachel watched none of it. She returned to her suite, changed and sat at the desk once more. There were still systems to recalibrate, still conversations to have, but something had shifted. Not in the company alone, in her. She thought back to the moment Daniel Crawford had looked at her and decided who she was. How easily authority had bent to assumption. How quickly dignity had been treated as conditional. That moment was not unique. It was replicated every day in smaller ways, quieter rooms, by people who never faced consequences. Rachel opened a new document. She titled it simply, Standards, not Guidelines. Standards. She began to write. Clear expectations, clear boundaries, clear consequences. Not framed as morality, but as competence. Not about image, but safety. Not about her, but everyone who would step onto those aircraft believing they would be treated as human first. Hours later, she closed the document. The city outside had darkened again, lights flickering on one by one. Rachel stood at the window, hands resting lightly on the glass. Somewhere, Daniel Crawford was likely sitting in silence, replaying choices he could no longer change. Somewhere, Emily Stanton was learning what insulation privilege did not provide. Somewhere, Sarah Collins was sleeping a little easier. Somewhere, Evan Brooks was staring at the ceiling, imagining a future that now felt possible. Rachel did not take pleasure in any of it. She took responsibility. And that, she knew, was the difference. Tomorrow, she would fly again, and the sky would remember. The next flight left before dawn. Rachel Morgan arrived early, not because she had to, but because she preferred to see the system before it noticed her. The private terminal was quiet, floors freshly polished, the air carrying that familiar blend of jet fuel and expensive coffee. A few passengers moved through the space with practiced ease, faces half lit by phone screens, minds already somewhere else. She wore a dark coat this time. Clean lines, no logo. Her tote was the same. At the check-in desk, a young agent straightened when she approached. He smiled, professional, unsure. "Good morning," he said. "May I have your name?" "Rachel Morgan," she replied. He typed. Paused, looked up again, eyes widening just a fraction before discipline kicked in. "Yes, ma'am." "Right this way." She watched the micro moment carefully. The instinct to defer. The reflex to elevate. "Please," she said, gently but firmly. "Just do your job." The agent flushed. "Of course. Sorry." She moved on, leaving him to recalibrate. On the tarmac, the aircraft waited, sleek and ready. Different jet, different crew. Same company. Same standards, or at least that was the question now being tested. The captain stood at the base of the stairs. Mid-40s, calm eyes, no unnecessary confidence. He extended a hand, then caught himself, offering a nod instead. "Miss Morgan," he said. "Captain Lewis Grant, welcome aboard." Rachel returned the nod. "Good morning, Captain." No smile, no tension, just acknowledgement. Inside, the cabin was already set. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, checking compartments, aligning details. No one stared. No one whispered. They knew who she was. They had been told. But they were waiting to see how that knowledge would be handled. Rachel took her seat. 1 Alpha again. She noticed the difference immediately. Not in the chair. In the air. It felt attentive without being anxious, professional without being brittle. As the last passengers boarded, a man in a tailored suit paused near her row, eyes flicking toward her, then away. He hesitated, then leaned toward the aisle. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you Rachel Morgan?" She looked up. "Yes." He swallowed. "I just wanted to say, thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For doing what most people with power don't," he said. "Using it." She studied him for a moment. "Make sure you hold people accountable in your own lane," she said. "That's how it scales." He nodded, as if receiving a quiet instruction, then moved on. The doors closed. The aircraft pushed back. Captain Grant's voice came over the intercom. Calm, clear, unembellished. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. We'll be departing shortly. Our destination is New York. Flight time approximately 7 hours." Rachel listened, not to the words, but to the cadence. No bravado, no performance. As they climbed, she allowed herself to relax into the seat. The city fell away beneath them, replaced by cloud and light. Midway through the flight, she stood and moved toward the galley. The flight attendant there froze for a heartbeat, then smiled. "Ms. Morgan, can I help you?" Rachel glanced at the jump seat. The same model, same metal, same unforgiving angles. "Do you know how long that seat is rated for continuous use?" Rachel asked. The attendant hesitated. "Short durations. Emergencies." Rachel nodded. "Exactly." She turned back toward the cabin. "Make sure no passenger is ever placed there again," she said. "For convenience. Or optics." "Yes, ma'am," the attendant said quickly. Rachel paused. "Not because I said so," she added. "Because it's wrong." The attendant straightened. "Understood." Rachel returned to her seat. Somewhere over the Atlantic, her phone vibrated. A message from Mark Reynolds. "Audit Phase 1 complete. Initial findings confirm systemic gaps, not isolated behavior. Recommendations attached." Rachel read them carefully, then typed a brief response. "Proceed to Phase 2. No delays." She set the phone down. Across the aisle, a woman watched her, curiosity plain. Late 50s, silver hair, thoughtful eyes. "You changed something," the woman said quietly. Rachel turned. "We're trying." The woman nodded. "Good. I've flown long enough to know when people are pretending." Rachel smiled, just slightly. Hours later, as the sun dipped and the cabin lights softened, Rachel thought again of Daniel Crawford, not with anger, with clarity. He had not been a monster. He had been typical. And that, she knew, was the real danger. When they landed in New York, the reception was efficient, respectful, subdued. No press, no spectacle. Just motion. Rachel disembarked and moved through the terminal, another traveler among many. Outside, the city waited, loud, indifferent, alive. Her phone buzzed one last time before she stepped into the car. A message from Sarah Collins. "Thank you." I stayed. I spoke up today. It went well. Rachel typed back. "Good. Keep going." She slid into the back seat as the car pulled into traffic. Ahead of her were more meetings, more resistance, more quiet moments where decisions would matter more than statements. She knew the story would be told in fragments, simplified, argued over. That was fine. What mattered was not the narrative. It was the change that no one could see from the outside. And that was already underway. The backlash arrived quietly at first. Rachel Morgan noticed it in the pauses before replies, in the careful language that replaced certainty, in the way invitations arrived with conditions attached. Meetings that had once been automatic now required confirmation. Partnerships that had felt solid suddenly wanted reviews. People did not say no. They said later. She expected it. Systems resist change not because they are alive, but because people are invested in their inertia. The board meeting took place on a grey afternoon, the kind where Manhattan feels compressed, streets tight with sound and movement. The conference room overlooked the river. Glass walls, long table. Familiar faces arranged in careful neutrality. Rachel took her seat at the head without ceremony. No one challenged it. A man cleared his throat. Senior board member. Decades in the industry. He folded his hands, the gesture practiced. "Rachel," he began, "there's concern that recent actions may have unintended consequences." She waited. "Public confidence is a delicate thing," he continued. "Air travel is built on trust." Rachel leaned back slightly. "Trust is built on consistency," she said, "not comfort." Another member spoke. "Removing a captain mid-flight, even internally, creates anxiety." "Leaving him in command would have created risk," Rachel replied. "I chose safety." A murmur moved through the room. Not disagreement. Calculation. "You're setting a precedent," someone else said. "Yes," Rachel said. "That's the point." Silence followed. Heavy, evaluative. She stood. "Let me be clear," she said. "What happened on that flight was not an aberration. It was exposure, and exposure is uncomfortable for anyone benefiting from the dark." A few eyes dropped, others hardened. "If this company is to survive the next decade," she continued, "we cannot afford leaders who confuse authority with infallibility. The sky doesn't forgive ego." No one interrupted. "I am not here to make you feel safe," Rachel said. "I am here to make this operation safer." She sat. The vote followed. Not unanimous. Enough. Afterward, as the room emptied, one man lingered. He was younger than the others. Quiet, had spoken little. "You're going to lose allies," he said. Rachel met his gaze. "I'll gain clarity." He nodded slowly. Fair trade. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of what had just been cemented. That evening, Rachel attended a small dinner. Not a fundraiser. Not a spectacle. 8 people. Long table. Low light. Conversations that leaned inward. Midway through the meal, a woman across from her spoke. "My husband flew with Captain Crawford once," she said. "He said the man made him feel invisible." Rachel absorbed that. Did he report it? The woman shook her head. Didn't think it mattered. Rachel looked down at her plate. "It always matters," she said. Later, alone in her apartment, Rachel reviewed another file. Emily Stanton. Not because she needed to, because she believed in follow-through. Emily had withdrawn from 2 boards, issued a carefully worded apology, enrolled in a leadership coaching program recommended by her father's advisors. The steps were correct. The intent remained unclear. Rachel closed the file. Growth could not be outsourced. The next morning brought a different kind of call. A regional operations manager, voice tight, controlled. "There's been an incident," he said. Rachel straightened. "Go on." A flight attendant, a disagreement over seating, a raised voice, a delayed departure. "Was protocol followed?" Rachel asked. "Yes," he said. "And that's why I'm calling." The attendant escalated appropriately. The passenger was moved with explanation. No assumptions. No threats. Rachel exhaled slowly. "Good," she said. "Document it. Share it." "Share it?" he echoed. "Yes," Rachel said. "Let people see what right looks like." By midday, the internal bulletin went out. Not highlighting punishment, highlighting process, calm resolution, respect. Responses followed. Some grateful, some defensive, some silent. That night, Rachel received a handwritten note. It had been scanned and emailed by an assistant who seemed unsure whether it belonged in her inbox. The handwriting was uneven, deliberate. "Ms. Morgan, I flew with your company for 40 years. I stopped last year. Yesterday, I booked again. Thank you for reminding me what dignity feels like." Rachel stared at the message longer than she intended. She forwarded it to Mark Reynolds. This is why. Weeks passed. The noise grew, then softened. Headlines shifted. Attention wandered. Inside the company, the changes took root quietly. New training modules, new evaluation criteria, anonymous reporting channels that actually led somewhere. Conversations that had once been avoided now occurred in conference rooms with doors open. Rachel watched from the center, intervening only when necessary. One afternoon, she received a calendar invite. Daniel Crawford had requested a meeting. She considered declining, not out of fear, out of principle. She accepted. He arrived early, sat across from her. No uniform, no authority to lean on. He looked older. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. Rachel nodded. "Speak." He did. Slowly, carefully. He did not excuse himself. He did not blame the moment. He named his failures. He named the system that had protected him. He named his own comfort within it. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "I just didn't want to leave without saying, I understand now why this mattered." Rachel listened. When he finished, she said, "Understanding is a beginning, not a conclusion." He nodded. "I'm teaching now," he said. "Ground school, new pilots." "Then teach them this," Rachel replied. "Skill keeps you employed. Awareness keeps people alive." He stood. "I will." When he left, Rachel sat alone for a moment, hands folded, breath steady. This was not redemption. It was alignment. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the skyline, Rachel stood by the window and watched the city light itself again. Thousands of small decisions unfolding at once, most unnoticed, all consequential. Power, she thought, was not the ability to end a career. It was the discipline to reshape what followed. And that work, she knew, was never finished. The invitation came without fanfare. No embossed letterhead, no executive assistant's flourish. Just a calendar block labeled Crew Forum, mandatory attendance, streamed to every base, every time zone. Rachel Morgan had insisted on that word. Mandatory, not optional, not encouraged, required. The hangar in Dallas was chosen for its size, not its symbolism. Concrete floors, exposed beams, a place built for work, not comfort. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, occupied by pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, dispatchers, some in uniform, some in jeans, all watching the small stage at the front with varying degrees of suspicion. Rachel stood off to the side as people settled. She did not hide. She did not center herself yet. Mark Reynolds leaned in. "We're live." Rachel nodded. A low murmur moved through the crowd. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. The kind of sounds people make when they are unsure what they are about to hear. Rachel stepped forward. She did not use the microphone at first. "I'm not here to motivate you," she said, voice carrying easily in the open space. "I'm not here to reassure you, and I'm not here to apologize for decisions that made some of you uncomfortable." The room stilled. "I'm here because this company has asked a lot of you," she continued. "Long hours, irregular schedules, responsibility that doesn't end when the door closes. And in return, too many of you have been told to accept behavior that makes your job harder, not safer." She paused. Let the words find their place. "There is a myth in aviation," Rachel said, "that experience automatically equals judgment." A few heads lifted. A few jaws tightened. "It doesn't," she went on. "Experience without reflection is just repetition." She looked out over the room. Faces of every age, every background. Some guarded, some hopeful, some openly skeptical. "Some of you were taught that speaking up is career suicide," Rachel said. "That hierarchy matters more than accuracy. That keeping your head down is professionalism." She shook her head once. "That culture ends now." A ripple moved through the crowd. Not applause. Something more cautious. Recognition. "I removed a captain mid-flight," she said. "Not because I enjoy power, not because I wanted to make an example, but because safety does not care about tenure, and neither do I." She stepped back. Mark Reynolds moved forward then, laying out the specifics. New reporting lines. New protections. What would happen when someone escalated an issue? What would not happen? Names were not named. Consequences were clear. When the floor opened for questions, the silence stretched. Then a hand rose. A flight attendant, early 30s. Voice steady, but tight. "What happens if we speak up and nothing changes?" she asked. Rachel answered without hesitation. "Then I have failed, and you will have recourse." Another hand, a mechanic. "What about captains who don't like being questioned?" "They'll learn," Rachel said. "Or they won't work here." A pilot near the back stood, older, arms crossed. "This all sounds good," he said. "But culture doesn't change because of memos." Rachel met his gaze. "You're right," she said. "It changes because of consequences." She let that sit. The forum ended without applause. People fulled out slowly, conversations low but animated. Something had shifted, though no one could quite name it yet. Later that night, Rachel sat alone in the hangar office, lights dimmed, the echo of the crowd still lingering in the concrete walls. Her phone buzzed with messages, some grateful, some angry, some afraid. She read them all. One message came from a number she did not recognize. "I've been flying 20 years. Tonight was the first time I felt like someone had my back." She saved it. Outside, a jet taxied past the hangar, engines glowing in the dark. Rachel watched it go, thinking of all the invisible decisions that kept it moving safely. The next morning, she boarded another flight. Different crew, different route, same test. This time, a junior flight attendant hesitated at the galley door, eyes flicking between a passenger and the seat assignment tablet. Rachel watched from a distance. The attendant took a breath, checked the manifest, explained the situation calmly, offered alternatives, no assumptions, no edge. The passenger complied, mildly annoyed but respectful. Rachel said nothing. That was the point. As the plane leveled off, Rachel allowed herself to rest her head against the seat for a moment. It was cool, not sleep, just stillness. Her phone buzzed again. A news alert, an opinion piece. Debate already forming. She dismissed it. What mattered would not trend. It would be felt in quieter ways, in fewer incidents, in voices raised earlier, in decisions questioned before they calcified into habit. Later, in her office back in New York, Rachel met with her leadership team. The agenda was full. Budgets, routes, technology upgrades, the machinery of a global company grinding forward. At the end, she closed her notebook. "One more thing," she said. They looked up. "Next quarter," Rachel said. "I want to include human factors performance in executive evaluations." A pause. Someone blinked. "Define human factors," one executive said carefully. Rachel's expression did not change. "How people are treated," she said, "and how quickly we act when they're not." The room absorbed that. After the meeting, as people filtered out, Mark Reynolds lingered. "You know this will make some people very uncomfortable," he said. Rachel nodded. "If it doesn't," she replied, It's not working. That evening, Rachel walked home instead of taking the car. The city hummed around her, indifferent and alive. She blended into the crowd, another person moving with purpose. She passed a bus stop and slowed. For a moment she thought of Daniel Crawford, standing there in the rain weeks earlier. The image had stayed with her longer than she expected. Not as a warning, as a reminder. Power revealed character. Loss of power revealed it faster. Rachel continued on, hands in her pockets, the weight of responsibility familiar now, settled. There was one chapter left to write. Not for the company, for the people watching, waiting, wondering if this would last. She intended to make sure it did. The final flight of the week lifted smoothly into a clear sky, the city shrinking beneath it until buildings became patterns, and patterns became memory. Rachel Morgan sat by the window, hands folded, watching the horizon widen. There was no tension in her shoulders now, no urgency, just the quiet hum of an operation doing what it was supposed to do. Across the cabin, the crew moved with practiced ease. Checklists were followed. Eye contact was made. Decisions were spoken aloud, not assumed. The difference was subtle, almost invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. But Rachel knew. She always had. She thought of the first night, the hoodie, the jump seat, the way power had mistaken silence for weakness. That moment felt distant now, not because it had faded, but because it had been absorbed into something larger. A recalibration, a line redrawn. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Calm, unadorned, focused on the work, not the performance of it. Rachel closed her eyes for a moment and let the sound wash over her. This was what competence sounded like when it wasn't trying to prove itself. When she opened her eyes, a young man in the aisle seat across from her caught her gaze. He looked away quickly, then back again, mustering the courage to speak. "Excuse me," he said. "I just wanted to say, I work ground operations." This week felt different. Rachel nodded once. "That's good." He smiled, relieved, as if he had been holding something in for days. "Yeah, it is." She returned her attention to the window. Somewhere below them, systems were adjusting. Habits were being questioned. People who had once stayed quiet were learning how to speak without fear. None of it dramatic, none of it loud. That was how real change worked. After landing, Rachel moved through the terminal without entourage or announcement. A few nods, a few double takes. Mostly she passed unnoticed, and she preferred it that way. Power didn't need a spotlight to function. It needed consistency. Outside, the late afternoon sun cut low across the pavement. She paused briefly, breathing in the familiar mix of air and motion and sound. For a moment, she let herself feel the weight of everything she carried. The responsibility, the scrutiny, the knowledge that every decision set a tone others would follow. Then she let it go. Her phone buzzed as she stepped into the car. A message from Mark Reynolds. Phase 2, metrics. Trending positive, reporting up, incidents down. Rachel typed back a single word. Good. The car pulled away from the curb, merging into traffic. She watched the city slide past, people moving through their own private storms and victories. Somewhere, someone would board a flight tonight and be treated with respect they no longer thought to question. Somewhere else, a crew member would speak up and be heard. Those were not headlines. They were outcomes. At home, Rachel placed her tote on the desk and removed her laptop. The document titled Standards was still open, cursor blinking patiently at the end. She read the last line she had written and added one more sentence. Clear, simple, final. She closed the file. As evening settled in, she poured a glass of water and stood by the window once more. The city lights came on gradually, one by one, like a quiet agreement. She thought of all the eyes that would never see her name, never know her story, and yet feel the effects of choices she had made. That was enough. Power was not about being recognized. It was about being responsible when no one was watching. She turned off the light and let the room fall into shadow, the city still alive beyond the glass. If this story resonated, take a moment to like and subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments with 3 simple words. Stay humble always.